All right, for Chapter 8, welcome back. Let's talk about designing pay levels and pay structures. So now that we kind of have the theory, let's actually look at the actual doing of designing these types of things. So we're going to look at salary surveys, market pricing, and pay structures. There's several different things that you want to know about. How do we actually go about looking at pricing? How do we develop surveys? And how do we get the data to actually show our clients what we're trying to accomplish? So you hear a lot about how do compensation professionals get their information? How do they know what the market rate is? How do they know what other competitors are paying? Well, the simplest answer is they do a survey. And here's kind of 5 purposes of doing a survey. You can adjust to your competitors. You can analyze the different problems. You basically send out surveys, and there are professional companies that will do this for you. Most businesses don't do their own internal surveys. There's a list of companies in your PowerPoint that are kind of the experts in this area. So most companies will kind of farm that out. But even small mom and pop shops may do their own internal survey and maybe send some data outside where they can get information online and they can get information from government websites that will help them determine what is the market telling us right now. How can we be competitive? So surveys are a big part of how we gather data. It's becoming, not as common as it used to be, but it's still the most common way to gather information. So let's talk more about that here in a second. So remember earlier, a couple of chapters ago, we were talking about benchmarking, and here's kind of that same way to look at it. So the shaded blocks there are more of your jobs that we're looking at benchmarking. These are the jobs that we'll do a survey on, or we'll go out and try to get information so that the boxes that aren't shaded, we can take that information and maybe write our own job description. So if you can believe it, one of the hardest job descriptions to actually write is a manager. Because in small companies, a manager may do everything related to managerial tasks. In a larger organization, then even if they're a manager, their tasks may still be very narrowed on what they're doing. So we have to benchmark jobs and look at the similarities and differences and to help us create an ultimate job description that we can agree on. So benchmarking, highly, highly important for what we're trying to accomplish. Here's an example, Exhibit 8.16, about regression results to a market line. You're going to hear the term market line quite a bit. And basically, if you take a look at it, we're kind of creating a line that'll give us kind of a weighted mean of where our predicted versus the actual pay is going to happen. Again, very important information for compensation professionals to know because we look at these types of things all the job. So if we're trying to determine a best fit or determine what is kind of the average rate that we're going, you heard me talking a couple chapters ago about that there's no really like a labor rate or a market rate. It is simply, there's not really a certain number you can say that this number has to be what we pay this person. But again, you can take this type of data that you see like in this picture graph right here, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what our predicted total compensation should be. And remember, we could say that our predicted number should be $139,000, but if we only have a budget to pay somebody $90,000, well, we have to come up with that money somehow. And if we don't have it, we just simply can't pay it. So we have to come up with other creative ways to look at it as well. But just know this kind of graph and this information will kind of help you determine how we determine what we should be paying somebody out in the market. And finally for this chapter, something very, very important I want to make sure you pay attention to is about job grades and job ranges. This is kind of really the heart of compensation is when we're working with grades and ranges. These are 2 different ways that you can assign how we're going to, pay somebody and kind of know the general range of money that we're going to pay somebody. So make sure you read up on grades and ranges. One thing that I really want you to look at is if you notice on the bottom of this slide, there's a link to the Human Resources page at St. Louis University, which is actually where I came from before I came here to Oklahoma State. I want you to go ahead and click on that link and read, because SLU does a really good job of listing kind of their pay ranges and how they determine grades. And what they're really doing is showing to the public, hey, here's based on a certain level, this is how much you're expected to pay. So what a company will do is they'll take a job, let's say it is an architect. And they'll determine, okay, based on the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, the education, all of this information, once they have that, they will take it and assign it to a grade. And for SLU, for example, its grade is 1 all the way to 15. A grade 1 is the most basic entry-level job. So maybe a janitor or maybe just a typist, something very, very basic, all the way to level 15, which is the vice presidents, the CEO, the president of the university, all like the people that have advanced degrees and and have been working for, for years and years and years. So that architect job, we assign it a relative value. Let's say we place it at a 9, and that 9 would tell us the whole range, and anywhere in that range is what we can pay somebody. So if somebody is more of an entry-level accountant, maybe we pay more at the minimum or the lower end of the range, all the way to somebody who's maybe been an architect for 30 years, maybe we pay them on the higher end of the range. So again, grades and ranges are very, very important for you to understand, because as part of our project later on in the semester, we're going to be looking at grades and ranges much more in detail. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you, class.